They never expected the thorns they threw at your feet would grow into the roots of your rise. That's the irony of balance. Those who build traps often end up living in them. The universe doesn't shout when it moves. It shifts subtly, quietly, and surgically corrects every injustice with a precision no hand can fake. What people call luck in your story is just cosmic alignment returning to its center. Those who smiled as they watched you stumble are now tripping on the very illusions they cast. And while they plotted in whispers, they never realized the scale was tipping, not in their favor. Critics, haters, let them watch. Their obsession doesn't come from power. It comes from the fear that yours is untouchable. Every attack they crafted became a spark in the furnace that forged you. Every attempt to ruin you bent the universe in your favor. That's not faith, that's fact. You don't have to believe in karma for it to believe in you. Let's be clear. The power of being chosen haunts people who are addicted to control. Your silence exposed them, your growth enraged them, and your peace. That's the loudest revenge of all. They wanted to ruin your name, but all they did was amplify your presence. Before we go deeper, pause. Like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment. Because when you engage, you push this message into the hands of another chosen one, still questioning their power. Your rise is not an accident, it's an outcome. And the future? It's yours to define. What you're about to hear isn't just a message, it's confirmation. If you've ever walked out of a room feeling colder than when you entered, if your spirit ever caught the shift before the storm, this is for you. You didn't imagine the betrayal. You didn't overreact. You survived a setup so calculated it was designed to destroy everything you've built. But it failed, because your discernment kicked in when no one else could see the knife behind the smile. Before we go further, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop 99 in the comments if you know this wasn't just pain, it was a ritual and you lived through it. Let the real ones find this. The ones who feel that burn in their gut when lies enter the room. Stick around, because what comes next doesn't just explain your past, it exposes their failure. Let's get started. Number 1. Never fear the cage. It was built to break, not to hold you. They never attacked your strength. They attacked your softness. Because that's where your real power lives. You weren't broken because you were weak. They came for you because you carried something they could never fake: loyalty, empathy, silence. They twisted the very traits that made you rare and tried to weaponize them against you. Your loyalty became their leash, your silence, their illusion of control, and your empathy. That became the open door they thought they could walk through freely. But what they didn't realize is this: silence doesn't always mean submission. Sometimes it's strategy, and your silence was the exact move that turned their entire plot to dust. See, being chosen isn't about applause. It's not about being praised or protected. It's about being seen for who you are and still being targeted for it. You weren't chosen for peace, you were chosen for pressure. Because pressure creates the kind of clarity that can't be faked. And every person who tried to tear you down was actually handing you the blueprint for your next level. You didn't just survive betrayal, you dissected it. You didn't just notice the setup, you studied the patterns, saw the shift in energy, and walked out before they could flip the switch. Let's stop sugarcoating this. They didn't want to just hurt you. They wanted a spectacle, a breakdown, a viral collapse, something public enough to make others doubt you, and private enough to make you question yourself. They weren't interested in damage, they were hungry for humiliation. That requires planning, and plan they did. They poked at your past, twisted your words, replayed your old wounds like reruns just to see if you'd finally fall apart in front of everyone. But you didn't. You didn't bleed when they cued the scene. You didn't give them the performance. And that shattered them more than any outburst ever could have. They built a theater of downfall, but forgot the most dangerous player on any stage is the one who sees through the act. And you? You saw it all. The smirks, the sudden silence, the fake concern, the emotional bait. You recognized it because you'd grown, because your discernment wasn't just active, it was unstoppable. You stepped off the stage, mid-scene, and let the curtain fall on all of it. Still, even after everything, you questioned yourself. Was it me? Did I overreact? Was I too sensitive? You weren't. You were accurate. And even in walking away, even in saving your own peace, you carried guilt. That's what makes you human. But make no mistake, the guilt was never yours to carry. They wanted you to mourn the loss of people who were only pretending to love you. They wanted you to shrink, to second-guess, to apologize for evolving, but not anymore. What they tried to make your downfall became the doorway. What they saw as your silence was your strength sharpening, and what they mistook for weakness was actually your initiation. They planned your public humiliation and ended up watching your private ascension. Number 2. Stop calling warnings anxiety. Your gut was screaming truth. You keep calling it anxiety, but that wasn't fear. It was precision, that sudden tension in the room, that drop in your stomach when they smiled too wide. That wasn't overthinking. That was your intuition screaming at full volume while your mind tried to translate the energy. Chosen one, you weren't nervous. You were right. And the only reason you felt crazy was because you were surrounded by people who depended on your silence to keep their masks in place. They call it paranoia because they don't want you to trust what you feel. But your gut, your internal radar, has never lied. It buzzes when deception enters the room. It stiffens when betrayal is watching you from across the table, and it tightens when manipulation tries to hug you like a friend. That's not dysfunction, that's protection. You survived the ritual because your instincts refused to let you play along with the lie. You didn't have the evidence, but you had the feeling. And that feeling, that's what pulled you out before the trap snapped shut. They wanted you confused. They wanted you questioning your own mind. But your discernment cut through the fog like a blade. Stop apologizing for noticing the shift in energy before anyone else. Stop labeling your clarity as panic. You are not unstable. You are aware. That unease wasn't your mind malfunctioning. It was your power coming online. And here's the twist. Every time you felt that anxiety, it was never about danger. It was about revelation. Your body knew who they were long before they showed their hand. That's not fear. That's your legacy waking you up. Trust it, always. Number 3. Refuse to perform in the downfall they scripted for you. They didn't just want you to fall. They wanted you to fall on cue. This wasn't random chaos. This was a scripted collapse, planned down to the last fake smile and whisper. They choreographed your humiliation like a show, expecting you to break exactly when the lights hit your face. They wanted tears. They wanted panic. They wanted the "I told you so" moment. But what they didn't expect was your refusal to give them the performance. Chosen one, your strength wasn't in yelling back. It was in the way you stood still while everything around you was trying to unravel you. They studied your wounds, used your past as their script, and even rehearsed your downfall with backup actors, fakes posing as friends, silence posing as neutrality. They knew how to press your triggers, but what they didn't know is that pain doesn't control you anymore. They forgot you don't bleed for show. You were walking through a staged collapse, a humiliation ritual dressed as concern. They wanted your reputation dismantled, your character questioned, your presence erased. They baited you with fake kindness, hoping you'd explode, but you didn't. And that silence, that restraint, that was your rebellion. That was your power. That was the moment the entire production started falling apart without its lead actor. They built the stage. They rolled the cameras. But you walked off script and ruined the scene. And now, they're left with empty spotlights, unanswered drama, and an audience that's starting to question the whole narrative. You didn't just survive their setup, you disrupted their system. And the more you rise in silence, the louder their failure echoes. Never perform in a downfall someone else wrote. Rewrite the story, burn the script, and let them choke on the silence you left behind. Number 4. Kill the guilt that loyalty to snakes planted in you. They didn't just betray you, they trained you to feel guilty for walking away after they did it. That's the trap. They slithered close, whispered comfort, wrapped themselves in your loyalty, then bit the very hand that held them. And when you finally backed away, when your discernment kicked in and said enough, they didn't apologize. They acted like you were the problem. That's psychological warfare at its finest. They weren't trying to break your heart. They were trying to twist it into submission. But chosen one, listen carefully. You don't owe a single tear to people who poisoned your peace. You don't owe anyone a second chance to bite you twice. Kill the guilt, rip it out, burn it down. It wasn't love you lost. It was a mask that finally slipped. And the guilt they planted in you, that wasn't yours. That was part of the ritual. That was part of the performance. You weren't supposed to walk away. You were supposed to crumble, question yourself, and crawl back for approval. But you didn't. And that's why they're really mad. They don't miss you. They miss your energy. They miss the access. They miss the version of you that stayed silent while they fed off your light. But that version of you died in the fire they started. The moment you chose peace over people-pleasing, you broke the cycle. You don't heal by reattaching yourself to the same venom that made you sick. So stop apologizing for saving yourself. Stop replaying scenes where you were the only one fighting for something real. Let the guilt die with their narrative. You were never too loyal. You were just surrounded by snakes who thought you'd never outgrow the cage. But you did, and now they're choking on the silence you left behind. Number 5. Don't let "Hey stranger" be the hook that rechains you. It always starts soft, never with fangs, always with a smile. That "Hey stranger" message, that random DM, that "I was just thinking about you" drop in. But chosen one, let's get real. They're not back because they miss you. They're back because your glow hit their radar like a signal flare. And now they want access again. Not to love you, to study you, to siphon what you've built in silence. They didn't check in because they healed. They circled back because you got harder to reach. They remember the version of you that forgave too quickly, that explained too much, that gave second chances like candy. But that version of you died in the fire they lit. The new you doesn't entertain ghosts in soft lighting. You see, when someone who broke you returns with charm, it's not a reunion, it's a test. And nostalgia is the bait. They'll wrap poison in old memories, hoping you forget the damage they did the first time. But listen closely. They didn't evolve. They adapted. They came back wearing your favorite lie, hoping you'd still be desperate enough to believe it. This isn't about closure, it's about control. And if you entertain it, even for a second, you risk being pulled back into a cycle that already tried to kill your peace. You didn't survive the ritual just to bow to the same energy that once mocked your fall. Let the message sit unread. Let the memory rot. The past has no place in your new alignment. They had their chance. They used it to wound you. Now they owe you distance, not conversation. It always starts soft, never with fangs, always with a smile. That "Hey stranger" message, that random DM, that "I was just thinking about you" drop in. But chosen one, let's get real. They're not back because they miss you. They're back because your glow hit their radar like a signal flare, and now they want access again. Not to love you, to study you, to siphon what you've built in silence. They didn't check in because they healed. They circled back because you got harder to reach. They remember the version of you that forgave too quickly, that explained too much, that gave second chances like candy. But that version of you died in the fire they lit. The new you doesn't entertain ghosts in soft lighting. You see, when someone who broke you returns with charm, it's not a reunion, it's a test. And nostalgia is the bait. They'll wrap poison in old memories, hoping you forget the damage they did the first time. But listen closely, they didn't evolve. They adapted. They came back wearing your favorite lie, hoping you'd still be desperate enough to believe it. This isn't about closure. It's about control. And if you entertain it, even for a second, you risk being pulled back into a cycle that already tried to kill your peace. You didn't survive the ritual just to bow to the same energy that once mocked your fall. Let the message sit unread. Let the memory rot. The past has no place in your new alignment. They had their chance. They used it to wound you. Now they owe you distance, not conversation. Number 6. Never doubt the energy shift. It's the mask slipping, not your imagination. They didn't flinch. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't threaten you. But your stomach dropped the moment they walked in. And that wasn't paranoia. That was the truth before it had words. You felt the temperature shift in the room, not because you're sensitive, but because you're chosen. And being chosen comes with an upgrade most people don't even understand. Discernment, not suspicion, not guessing, not fear, knowing. See, they didn't expect you to notice. They counted on your kindness. They thought you'd smile through the glitch, brush it off as nothing, tell yourself you were overthinking again. But that off energy you kept trying to ignore, that wasn't awkwardness. That was exposure. The mask was slipping, and your intuition caught the glitch in real time. They tried to hide behind words, behind fake warmth, behind good intentions, but you saw it. You felt it. The energy didn't match the tone, the timing didn't match the story, and the silence that followed your presence. That wasn't coincidence. That was recognition. You were never meant to be fooled. Chosen ones don't just hear lies, they feel the vibration of them. You clock danger before it becomes visible. And the moment you trusted that gift, everything started making sense. So stop apologizing for trusting what your body told you before your brain could process it. That wasn't anxiety. That was your internal alarm system. You weren't being judgmental. You were being accurate. And that's what scared them most. You didn't need proof. You just needed presence. Your energy saw what their performance tried to hide. And they'll never recover from the fact that you walked away before they even delivered their first blow. Number 7. Stop apologizing for being the mirror they can't stand. They didn't hate you because you did something wrong. They hated you because every time you showed up, you reflected everything they were running from. You didn't change into someone else. You became a mirror. A sharp, unfiltered, soul-level mirror that forced them to face their lies, their cowardice, their stagnation. And that's what made you dangerous. You weren't trying to expose them, but your existence did it anyway. See, when you stopped performing, when you stopped shrinking to fit their comfort zone, they lost their grip. Your silence was too loud, your healing too obvious, your growth too honest. And when they looked at you, they didn't see support. They saw proof. Proof that someone could evolve, could rise, could glow without permission, without a mask, without faking it for applause. And it burned them. So they spun narratives. You've changed. You're cold. You think you're better. No, you just stopped lowering your frequency to keep their ego warm. And that shook them. Because the truth is, they liked the version of you that needed them, that doubted itself. That stayed quiet just to keep the peace. But when you became whole, they saw everything they refused to become, and they called it arrogance. Don't apologize for that. Don't explain your clarity to those addicted to confusion. You were never meant to blend in. You were designed to disrupt, and your glow doesn't need approval to shine. You weren't placed here to make others feel comfortable in their delusion. You were sent to wake the room just by walking into it. So stop watering yourself down to keep others from drowning in your depth. If they can't handle the reflection, let them look away. You're not the villain, they're just blinded by the light you stopped dimming. Number 8. Don't confuse the setup for a second chance. They'll come back like nothing happened, like they didn't twist the knife and smile while doing it. The message, the casual, "I've been thinking about you," the fake concern, it's not love, it's strategy. Don't confuse the setup for a second chance. This isn't reconciliation, it's reconnaissance. They're checking the lock they once broke, testing if the door they slammed is still cracked open. But chosen one, this isn't their story to rewrite. Not anymore. You survived what they thought would destroy you. And now that you're healing, rising, glowing in silence, they feel it. Your absence is louder than your presence ever was, and that terrifies them. So they come back dressed in nostalgia, hoping memory will override discernment. But this time, your clarity won't let them pass, because now you know the ones who break you don't get to watch you rebuild. Understand this. They didn't miss you. They missed the control, the power, the version of you that doubted your instincts, that handed out grace without receipts. But that version died in the fire they lit. The new you remembers how it felt to walk away and finally breathe. And that peace? That's not something you gamble again for closure wrapped in manipulation. So when they resurface with soft words and old photos, remind yourself, not everything familiar is safe. Not every return is divine. Sometimes the past knocks just to see if you'll answer with wounds still open. But not this time. You didn't survive a humiliation ritual just to fall into the same trap with prettier bait. Close the door, not with anger, but with power. Let them feel the silence they tried to bury you in, because now they know you're no longer reachable, and that's their real punishment. Number 9. Reject the lie that you were weak. You were being refined by fire. They told you that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much. They said you couldn't handle the pressure, that the silence, the isolation, the staged betrayal would break you. But what they didn't realize was this: you weren't being broken, you were being refined. The heat wasn't punishment, it was purification. Every fake smile, every cold shoulder, every calculated jab was part of a fire designed to strip away the parts of you that no longer served your power. And while they stood around waiting for you to crumble, you were evolving into something they couldn't predict and definitely couldn't control. You see, the chosen don't rise through comfort. They rise through chaos, through fire, through pressure that would crush anyone not built for legacy. That's why they came at you from all angles. That's why it was people you trusted. That's why it was public, messy, humiliating. Because if the attack was soft, you might have missed the lesson. But life knew better. It turned the betrayal into your classroom and gave you the only diploma that matters: clarity. So let's kill the narrative right now. You weren't weak. You weren't falling apart. You were being molded into someone they couldn't access anymore. The truth? They never expected you to rise out of that fire. They lit the match thinking you'd burn, but you didn't burn. You forged. And now? That new version of you, the one they can't manipulate, can't guilt, can't humiliate, that version is the consequence they never saw coming. You're not sensitive. You're sharpened. You're not too emotional. You're aware, and what they mistook for weakness, that was just you learning how to become untouchable in plain sight. Number 10. Never underestimate the power of a silent system against you. They made you think it was just one person with a grudge, one moment, one falling out. But what you were up against was never that small. Chosen one, you weren't just attacked by a person. You were targeted by a system, silent, coordinated, calculated, a network of whispers, nods, fake support, and masked envy. They didn't come at you loud because they couldn't, so they moved in shadows, spreading confusion while keeping their hands clean. That's how these systems operate, quiet enough to make you question your own clarity, subtle enough to make you look like the problem. They used people close to you, knowing you'd be slower to suspect them. They leveraged your history, your patterns, your kindness, weaponized everything you gave freely. And while you were wondering, what did I do? They were syncing up their moves like a machine. The silence wasn't peace, it was strategy. And the worst part, some of them weren't even fully aware they were part of it. That's how deep manipulation runs. But here's what they didn't calculate. Your discernment doesn't need proof. It just needs presence. And yours caught the shift. You pulled back, you shut the doors, you got quiet. Not because you were afraid, but because you were watching, observing, letting them reveal their own roles. So don't underestimate what you made it through. You didn't just survive people, you survived an engineered collapse meant to discredit you in silence. What they thought would break you became the exact exposure of their system. And now, they're scrambling to maintain the illusion while you're rising through the wreckage. You weren't just up against betrayal, you were up against architecture, and still, you didn't fall. That's the power of being chosen. You weren't outnumbered, you were just out of reach. Number 11. Watch for the attack that feels like a welcome mat. They won't knock with fists anymore. They'll knock with memories, with softness, with fake smiles dipped in nostalgia, hoping you're still starving for the connection they once used to destroy you. That's how the next attack shows up. Not like a war, but like a reunion. Not loud, but familiar. That's the trick. The more evolved you become, the more disguised the sabotage gets. You've already survived the fire, chosen one. So now they shift tactics. They know direct chaos can't break you anymore, so they wrap their intentions in comfort, in just checking on you, in thought of you today. But make no mistake, those aren't warm gestures. They're spiritual surveillance. They're testing the lock, checking the cracks, hoping your boundaries have softened just enough to slip back in. You'll feel it in the pit of your gut before the words even finish leaving their mouth. The tension won't make sense on the surface, but your body will scream. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition, because you've been here before, and now you're not the version of yourself who needed the apology or the closure. You're the version who sees the setup before the stage is even built. They're not coming for conversation, they're coming for confirmation, to see if you still bleed, if you still flinch, if your glow can be dimmed by the same hands that tried to silence you last time. But this time, you don't explain. You don't entertain. You don't reopen old doors just because they learned how to knock softer. Your discernment saved your life once, and it will do it again. When the welcome mat feels too rehearsed, step back. If peace doesn't follow their presence, don't follow them. You're not rude. You're protected. You've already passed the test. Don't retake it for nostalgia. Number 12. Stop calling it survival. You've already won the war. Let's get something straight. You didn't crawl out of that chaos just to say you made it. You weren't merely surviving. You were conquering in silence. That wasn't just pain you walked through. That was a full-blown ambush, a ritual, a stage set to shatter your identity. And yet, here you are, not only standing but glowing harder than ever. That's not survival. That's domination. They wanted you to limp through life, emotionally bruised and spiritually silenced. They wanted the trauma to be your signature move. But the fact that you're breathing, thinking clearly, setting boundaries, glowing in rooms they tried to lock you out of, that's not survival. That's evidence that the war is over and you won. Not because you screamed louder than them, but because you outlasted every whisper, every smear, every fake smile sent to destroy you. The real battlefield wasn't external, it was in your mind. And the moment you stopped questioning your worth, the enemy lost its only weapon. You didn't win with fists, you won with silence, discernment and clarity so sharp it made their manipulation collapse on itself. You didn't need revenge. You became the reminder. You are the story they can't erase, the light they couldn't kill, the threat they hoped would disappear. So stop saying you're surviving. That phase ended the day you realized the game they played was never bigger than the power you carry. You didn't escape the fire. You absorbed it. You became it. And now, anyone who tries to dim your flame ends up getting burned. The war is over. Chosen one. You're not surviving anymore. You're reigning. And now, let's bring this full circle, because if you've made it this far, it's not by accident. Chosen one, you didn't just outlive the setup, you outshined it. You were never the victim, you were the proof. The humiliation didn't destroy you, it revealed you, and now the very silence they mocked has become the sound of your rise. If this message struck your spirit, don't scroll in silence. Like this video, subscribe to stay connected, and drop 77 in the comments if you know the ritual failed, but you didn't. Your glow is the evidence, and your rise already in motion.